Showtime, everybody. It's time for Bring It In, where Jarod just hatched an amazing idea, which is you should have your Alexa call out every now and again, 2 minutes left in the period. just to feel alive.
Oh, man. Missed that sound.
You would, though, right? You'd perk up a little when there's 2 minutes left. You'd be like, oh, focus, people. David, we should dedicate today's show. You want to take that over?
Oh, yes. Thank you. I forgot. Yes, today was the day. In an alternate universe, my twins were graduating high school today. And they actually go to a collegiate high school, so they had been taking college classes all year. And we have a banner in our front yard, and I think their principal's coming over and doing something. I don't know. So it won't be. My mom is crying. She was going to go to ours, my mom and dad. They were going to go to our kids today. And my brother's son, who's going to be at Duke next year, in theory, he may be online, but he graduates in 2 weeks from a school in Miami. And so they're missing 2 graduations. So they're sad. My kids are fine. They'll be fine.
Well, you've raised strong, resilient young people, and that's to your credit.
What are you going to do?
Right? I don't know. Give them a high five.
Complaining about it doesn't do a darn thing, and they can't solve anything. So their goal in life is just not to get their parents and grandparents sick. So pretty easy, low-hanging fruit for them, just to be sure.
You guys really know how to party.
Oh, we know how to party. Don't get me wrong. Not during the pandemic, perhaps, but everywhere else, yes.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to Max and Rachel. Amazing kids. I'm sure they're going to do very well with their next things.
Let's hope so.
And we are going to take on the hard challenge of 9x90 in their honor.
Let's go.
And the chat's already happening. Questions, of course, can go in there, as I never forget to tell you. And you see, Randy has a nice quote. He says, Tuesdays with Maury has nothing on Fridays with Jarod. It's Friday with Jarod.
I appreciate that, Randy.
All right, 90 seconds on the clock. Judy's on the ready there.
Ready?
Here we go.
Okay, let it rip.
So we've all been watching The Last Dance, and there's been a lot of talk about Michael Jordan, except for Henry, of course. And, you know, it's interesting because the idea of race and Jordan's lack of standing out or talking about important issues that affect the Black community are a hot button issue and have been for the entirety of his career. Howard Bryant writes about this brilliantly in his book, The Heritage and Full Dissidence, where he so cleanly says, to be Black is to be dissident, right? And so what I find fascinating here is that Jordan followed a certain playbook. It was the O.J. Simpson playbook, right? And it was, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that you do not associate me with these undesirables, right? And that is, unfortunately, how mainstream sees Black and brown people largely, right? Okay, if you're super clean cut, you do all these wonderful things, we love you. But if you start doing anything a little bit outside of that box that is positive towards it, no, we're out, and we can't deal with that. And it's a shame, because you look back through the history, you've got great guys like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, John Carlos, Tommy Smith, Jim Brown, although now Jim Brown's problematic. They really stood for something when there was really, they could have lost everything, right? And so I just want to say kudos to those guys and what they've done for the history of Black people in America. I cede the rest of my time.
All right. So I'm not one who enjoys the fight between comparing players and eras. I do it from a role kind of like an analytical or pragmatic point of view. If somebody's been teaching this game a long time. And I just was thinking, you know, there's talk of Isaiah Thomas a lot now because of the documentary. And I was an enormous Isaiah fan ever since he won the national championship. I watched his game live as a sophomore in college when he played for the Hoosiers. Their sixth man was from Florida, so I loved him. And he's one of the best 3 or 4 point guards, I guess you could say, of all time. But drop Damian Lillard into that game, that era, and bring that Isaiah into this game, and I don't think it's close. I think Lillard can do anything Isaiah could do and shoot it from 15 feet farther out consistently. Just as confident, his incredible moxie, incredible toughness, a very authentic person. I think his teammates would love him. The game is just, we as coaches have allowed our players to get so much better because we've let them do things that maybe are, well, definitely we didn't let them do in the past. The handle's the same. More guys can dribble like Isaiah could. Damian certainly can. But none of those guys could shoot the way these guys can shoot. And listen, That's super important in basketball. Be able to make shots from everywhere, off, not just catch and shoot, but off the dribble too, which Damian can do. So to me, I think that's a great example of Lillard's not the best point guard in this game. Isaiah was, and Lillard's a much more talented player now than Isaiah was.
All right. Love that point, David. And I'm just going to go out of order to follow it up with this. I'm reading from David Epstein's book, Range. An enthusiastic, even childish, playful streak is a recurring theme in research on creative thinkers. University of Manchester physicist Andre Geim employs Friday night experiments. It was a Friday night when he began the work that led to his 2000 Ig Nobel Prize. The Ig Nobel is given for work that at first blush seems ridiculous or trivial. The mascot is an image of Rodin's The Thinker sculpture, except the stinker has fallen off the pedestal and is lying on his back on the ground. In the name of speed, I'm going to tell you that this same guy, his Friday night experiments led to the Nobel Prize. Like, because this was the time he was free to just try other stupid stuff, right? It's Friday night in the lab in the NBA, people. Like, now's the time when you can just try stuff that you think might not work, right? And so Lillard has a bag of tricks. He actually told Terry Stotts already that he intends to shoot from half court when they come back, right? In the regular course of play. Like, I just feel like the game suffered in Isaiah Thomas's time because people weren't expansive enough, creative enough in their thinking about what might work, right? And I even remember Bill Russell had this whole thing about how Dr. J's like swooping under the hoop. Like, he's like, first he had to think of that. Like, once he thought of it, many players could do it, but Dr. J thought of it. So I feel like not a lot of upside in a pandemic, but one is try stuff. It's Friday night in the lab. Do something that's not going to work, and we're done. Thank you, Judy.
So it's a theme we've got developing here, and really where we are right now is, should we really stop comparing players across era? Because it's really not fair anymore, right? And if you continue to do this top 5 thing, there's only 5 spots in the top 5. We're gonna have to start moving guys out eventually, just because modern science says every person today, almost every person, is a better athlete than who was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Jaren Jackson Jr. is likely a better athlete than anybody that played in the NBA 40 years ago. Now, is he better? Well, there are different things that go into that, right? Like shooting, all these different things. I agree with Coach that there is a way in which you can look at it and say that the players of today, of course, are far better because of what they're allowed to do. What we should start doing now when we do comparing players across different eras is let's go by blockets of time, 60s to 70s, 80s to whatever, and do it that way. That'll make it for a more fair and balanced conversation, because you don't want to forget about the old guys, right? A guy like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, we can't forget him. We can't forget Bill Russell. We can't forget Wilt Chamberlain. We cannot forget George Mikan. We can't forget these people, right? So when we're doing that, let's just keep in mind that
Game calls, unbelievable. Sorry, Jarod, keep going.
It's okay. There are some amazing people that play basketball in the latter day. And Coach, Damian is better, but how about Isaiah Thomas? 25 points in the final on a busted leg. That was incredible.
I didn't think it was incredible because I was a Lakers fan. I watched the game live.
Well, yeah, not as a Laker fan, it was bad.
I was not happy at all with that performance by Isaiah. It was remarkable. All right, so I'm normally okay, here we go. I'm normally, I think, a relatively or maybe very much an optimistic person. I don't see how there's any games in the NBA, really any pro sports, but we're a basketball company. I don't see how there's any more games in at least 2020. We have too many executives and coaches who are senior citizens who don't need to risk their lives. Their bills are going to be paid, and their lives are good, and they have children and grandchildren, and they don't have to go to work. So why would they? Forget about the players, which I know we're going to talk about later. And absolutely, they are in the same boat. Many of them are, and they're competitive as hell. But this is not Gladiator. They don't have to fight for their life to prove something when the consequence might be death, or at least we heard Brandon Greer talk about how hard it was to get his lungs back. He's a pretty good shape 34-year-old. We have older guys than that in the NBA that play. So I just can't imagine Greg Popovich having any interest at all, or Doc Rivers, as much as they want to win a championship, to potentially not live the way they can live and age as gracefully as they can for a basketball game when we are not testing at all and we're basically run by government now faking things. I don't see how these guys are going to say, okay. They have a meeting today. I'm interested to hear what they have to say. Maybe they'll work out one-on-one. I don't see how games are played in 2020.
Judy, I love you're so pro right now. Okay, so McKay Coppins, wonderful writer for The Atlantic, published a story about flying on a commercial jet recently, and it's like there's a photo of people in gas masks. McKay's story is that he was trying to get to his assigned seat, and the person on the aisle told him not to sit there, then physically blocked the aisle with his leg.
Wow.
Then when the flight attendant forced him to let the guy in, the guy was cursing at him, and then eventually they upgraded McKay to first class. They felt so bad about how I'd been treated. Then he leaned his head on the window. The article ends with he leans his head on the window and thinks about how nice the view is or whatever. And then he realizes, oh gosh, I've done a dumb thing here. How many people have touched this window? So then he hand sanitizes his head. Their police were called to the O'Hare food court to break up an argument between people who got too close to each other. Like, the point is, the G League, as Brandon Greer pointed out on the show, and the WNBA, as we discussed yesterday, are only going to, I think, reopen affordably when commercial flying is acceptable, okay, safe, and we're nowhere close to that right now, just from this story. So echoing what you're saying, David, and by the way, I think those are both generally money-losing leagues. So we would need owners who want to spring for all of this and operate in these conditions. Seems like a tall order to me. That clock is so big.
I agree.
Y'all honest.
Oh man.
Hey, Jarod.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh, he's on the
go
clock.
Go and put 3 on the clock if you want. He can take all my time on this subject. Is that allowable, Henry?
That's so nice of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
It's a really great topic.
Okay, I'm going to give you 3 minutes.
Love it. Thank you, David.
I can talk about my thing next week.
Today it's time for my weekly rant against the ruling class. So Betsy DeVos, who is the current Secretary of Education, a job which she is woefully unqualified for. Betsy DeVos, of course, is the wife of Orlando Magic Board of Governor or owner, whatever, Dick DeVos, and the brother of Eric Prince, who's another horrible human being. She has recently, under the guise of changing and making it okay for students to report sexual assault and rape at school, rolled back a bunch of the Title IX rules that President Obama enacted. And according to Betsy DeVos, she says this new regulation requires schools to act in meaningful ways to support survivors of sexual misconduct without sacrificing important safeguards to ensure a fair and transparent process. We can and must continue to fight sexual misconduct in our nation's schools, and this rule makes certain that fight continues. The interesting part in that quote there is, without sacrificing important safeguards to ensure a fair and transparent process. Fair and transparent to whom? This rule makes it harder for survivors to report sexual violence, and it reduces the school's liabilities for covering up sexual harassment. In addition, Donald Trump has rolled back a bunch of the President Obama Title IX things that he enacted, and he says it will save schools roughly $280 million over the next 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what is happening to us on a daily basis, and I get on this show and I say it, but I'm going to say it again. This is what these people are doing to us daily, the ruling class. And if we continue to be dismayed and despondent because of woe is me, this world is just getting terrible and it's not going to get better, this is the feeling they want us to have so that we stop fighting and doing things for democracy. Democracy is needed here. We need it now more than ever. What we're seeing with coronavirus, what we're seeing with what they're doing, again, this is happening in the middle of a pandemic. Let's just roll these things back. No one's paying attention. As a society, we all need to remember that fighting for one another is what this is about. There is more of us than them. If we can really recognize that and realize that our combined interests are far more important than those that are in charge of us, we'd be in a lot better place. David, thank you so much.
I'm going to take these 40 seconds then. I'm going to follow up with you, Jarod. I've got twins. I've talked to them. They're going to college in theory next year. I'm not worried about my son one bit. I'm not worried
about Rachel.
I'm worried about my daughter. Yeah. I mean, I'm just speaking clearly. I've had conversations with my son. It's certainly possible, and I know 2 people have been falsely accused, and it came out. But I have, 600 people that I stay in touch with the course of the year. 2 of them, of guys, 2 of them have been falsely accused in their life. Just 2. I'm not worried about Max. I'm worried about my daughter, and the schools clearly are not. And it's a tragedy to be coming for sure.
Too much. Too much.
Well said, Jarod, by the way.
Well
Thank
said.
you,
Thoughtful
Coach.
pause to reflect. What we
I
just
get
did.
enough time Monday through Friday to talk. Yeah, I'm happy
Okay.
to do it for 90 seconds.
Here comes a pretty big tone shift. My son and I have been watching the Netflix Formula One show. Anybody Drive to Survive? Anybody into this?
Heard it.
No, but I'm
Heard of it.
excited to hear
I
about
didn't
it.
think I was gonna like it. I don't know anything about auto racing, but I've had some big NBA thoughts from this show. Number one, it's the show I want about the NBA. It's beautifully shot. It's unbelievably behind the scenes. So like when the team's thinking of firing the driver mid-season, before they know the driver, they're telling the camera, like, he's just not panning out, like blah blah blah. Like it's like soap opera with some driving, right? So I feel like we've struggled a lot with like, what will the product be that will make the NBA popular to non-NBA fans? This product makes Formula One popular to non-racing fans, right? I think it's a little bit of a thing to think about. Second thing is it's beautiful. And I sometimes think we forget this. Like this game that we love is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. Just like these people move like the finest ballerinas you've ever seen times a million. And just showing that on the big screen in HD. There's so many moments of the show that are just like beautiful shot to beautiful shot. And then finally, David always talks about how the skill of a teacher or a coach is how many different kinds of people can you coach. We can talk about this more in a second because I'm out of time, but they fired this one driver and I'm like, oh, David could have gotten that guy a job. No, but he could have fixed that guy. No problem. Anyway.
What's the name of the show, Henry?
It's called Formula One Drive to Survive. It's like the Netflix Formula One show.
Where are they doing it? What country? In America?
It follows
Monaco,
the Formula
probably.
One tour, like everywhere it goes all over the world.
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Have you seen
either of you Ford versus Ferrari?
I heard it's
I
great.
have not. Yeah, it's good though.
So I don't care for race cars at all, but it is kind of similar to what Henry's saying. It is a brilliant story of someone having a vision and building the vision. Matt Damon plays the guy that had the idea of how can we help an American, company Ford do well. I was really surprised at how much I liked it.
Yeah.
So
good story's a good story, man.
Yeah,
gotta love good stories.
No question. Yeah.
Damon's no costume, Randy said.
That's funny. Randy's funny. All right, Randy, don't send me a Matt Damon mask, please.
Wait, does everybody know what happened there? Do you know? Should we explain what happened here?
Oh yeah, I heard the story.
With the mask?
Yeah.
He said it's on the way. Yeah, so I got an envelope. I don't know if I said this, I got an envelope the other day. I almost threw it out because I didn't see any name on the envelope, and I just figured it was trash. But something inside me said, "Yeah, let me see what it is." And it was a. I probably have it here somewhere. It's a Kevin Costner mask, but we got some chuckles out of. Luckily, it wasn't the best look for him, so it didn't get me mad. Otherwise, I might have burnt it.
Coach, it's something that Henry brought up. Sorry, Henry, about like coaching and different styles of players. It wasn't basketball, but it was elite high-level swimming, like kids that went to Olympic trials. So I was a coach for many years, and I can appreciate that because that's a tough sport, right? It's individual in that I have to make my times. There's a team dynamic to it. One of the things that I was most proud of was the ability to, let's say I'm coaching a senior national group and I've got 15 kids in 3 lanes, right? And knowing their personalities and being able to motivate and get the most out of each one of them within the context of that environment. And I'd love to hear you talk about that because there were players who, or swimmers, specifically guys, who I could challenge in front of the group and they would respond to that. There were some guys that would not. I have to pull them out of the pool, take them to the side, coddle them a little bit. I get the same result that I want, right? I just love to hear you talk about that process.
No, it's exactly right. I've had players where I could really get on them, and they wanted that, and quite frankly, they needed that, which is why they wanted it. And others, I just had to just speak to them, like they didn't need any more pushing at all. This is called bring it in. And so I have a lot of respect for you as a swim coach. It's not so easy to bring it in as it is on a basketball court. What my teaching model is, especially like at IMG where Henry was once, but even back in the day when I was coaching at a gym, if I had at least 4 baskets at IMG, we had 12. I brought everyone in. I'd make my teaching point. My assistants already knew what we were trying to focus on. And then I'd release everyone to their baskets and I'd kind of wander around. And I would sometimes use my big boy voice and get everyone to hear it. If someone was having a problem that I thought everyone else was, I'd speak loudly. And if it was just one individual player, I just walked to that player and quietly would talk to him. After the skill session was over, I bring him back in. I finish up that teaching point, and then we move on to the next one, send it back to the baskets again. And that's always kind of how I've done it. Camps a lot of times use stations where you go from one basket to another, and each coach is teaching the same thing 4 or 5 or 6 times. I always hated that. 5-star is famous for that. I found it better to have every coach teaching the same thing at a basket and then get a new skill, have every coach teach that, and then my job is just to kind of tweak things here and there. But if you're a one-size-fits-all guy, you're missing so many guys or girls. That's just not how I've never had success that way, because we all learn so differently. Some are visual, some is auditory. Some people are sensitive, and there's nothing wrong with that. They might come from a really bad home life where yelling just doesn't work. My job is, if I care about the kid, is to know that they're not responding to this, and I've got to come up with something different. Otherwise, I'm not a very effective teacher.
100%.
We talked about Ben Simmons, who we believe to be a pretty good 3-point shooter, who just has anxiety about how he'll be seen shooting 30% when he wants to shoot 40%, right? So the challenge is he doesn't feel confident enough. He needs to be coaxed out of his shell and needs to take more risk, right? Like, you're never, I mean, I'm no psychotherapist here, but I don't think you're ever going to get that guy to feel more confident by screaming at him, right?
No.
In the Formula One story, this team, the Red Bull team, has 2 drivers. Max Verstappen is like, at least comes off in the video as like the most robotic, like doesn't care about anyone guy in the world. And he's really good. And they coach him by just like, get him, Max, get him, pass that guy. Faster, Max, faster. Like everything's just like more. He's like, got it. And just passes people and sometimes wrecks the car, but sometimes wins. Then they get a Ben Simmons, like a younger, more sensitive type. And he's a guy who has some bad early races and his confidence just starts to tank. And here's where I'm like, he just needs a hug.
Yeah.
Right. Like he needs to be told he has 20 races to stabilize. And so they tell him that. They tell him like, oh, don't worry. We're not worried about today. And don't obsess about your speed and your stats and everything. And then they go right around the corner and they're like, he's 0.9 slower in the 3rd turn. The whole team is completely obsessed over his every increment of performance. And then they do fire him midseason. like he was dead right to be worried about his job every second, right? But
Yeah.
He needed to be made to feel safe, and they had no ability to do that.
Randy just asked, what if you told Ben you take him out if he doesn't shoot? That's exactly what we do. When we have a player who we know can shoot, different if they can't shoot. They got to make it in practice first before you met him into doing games. But the kid that can shoot, that is passing up open shots, if he cares about playing, which most of them do, you got to take him out. And never yell until you shoot that shot. Like, why am I playing you? You got to shoot it. And then when he misses, clap. Every time I used to have a young player miss with his left hand on the left side, I don't care how much time was left in the game, I would erupt from the sideline. Back in my 20s, I was an angry coach a lot, but not then. When you messed up doing the right thing, that was a process win. We all erupted. When you try to take a charge and it was very clearly a block and you're 14, if our bench didn't get up with enthusiasm, I sent them to the locker room. Maybe only did one time because they learned. We're going to cheer that effort regardless of the result. And that's how all of a sudden guys are looking to take charges. And that's how you start doing it. You beat them to the spot. If you react late, you'll get the block. It's just too slow. We're going to cheer for you. Now you're looking because you want to get cheered again. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. Randy brought up an interesting point. He said, is there similarities between coaching and the office? And I say this all the time. Like, it's not a sensitive thing for me, but coming up, coaches that were super dominant alpha males that yelled at me, that never worked. And it wasn't like an intimidation thing. I just tuned them out. Like, I'm like, you look ridiculous screaming and yelling. Like, I don't respect that. For me, it was always coaches that if they would appeal to me intellectually, like, okay, here's the framework of how this works. And the coaches that knew that got that. Same with bosses in my corporate professional life. The ones that were just like, throwing their weight around the office, I'm like, I have nothing for you. But the ones who are like, here's how you fit into the larger overall mechanism. Got it. Like, right? Like, and I think, again, managers don't know that because there's so many bad managers that teach more bad managers. So many bad coaches that train more bad coaches. That's just how it goes.
David has this amazing point. rather than have him explain his amazing point, why don't I do it?
I knew you were thinking that, just so you know. I knew that was thinking that in your head.
Dave is like, it's easy to coach someone who's motivated like Michael Jordan, right? You just tell him to go figure out how to do this thing and he'll do it. Like if your coaching is designed for people motivated like that, you can't coach very many people, right? Like how do you manage the more complicated person? Dave, now you can take over and say it better than
well, I mean, Henry, you know this well too. We're first in the business to inspire as leaders. This is where, as an example, where our federal government has failed us so tragically, is we are not being inspired. And all of us are inspired for our own reasons. Well, Henry and I care about our families, right? I'd like to hug my parents again and my mother-in-law, and I'd like to hug my daughter and really hug her the way I want to. So I'm motivated for a different reason. But if we were inspired, for example, to wear masks, because the people in charge of us, both at the government, state and federal level, keep saying, if we keep washing our hands and we all wear masks, we are doing an enormous amount of work to prevent the virus from spreading while we figure out these other things. The alternative is what they're doing now, which is not wearing masks publicly and not asking any of us to wear masks. What's next? Stop washing hands too? They're not even talking about washing hands anymore. They might start saying, don't even do that so much, which is the exact opposite of what we should be doing, which is why I don't think we play any games in 2020. But if we're supposed to breathe spirit, well, how do you do that? You get them on the same page for what they want to accomplish. You let them understand. I always talk about, show them, this is something Henry does very well to manage our business. And going back to the days when he was running ESPN, the blueprint for success, right? People can be beautiful writers and I'm not a beautiful writer, but I know how to communicate my message. But Henry helps me understand how to communicate it better. He gives me that blueprint. I don't always take it right away because I'm an old man and used to my own habits.
You do great.
But I'm aware, I'm mindful that I want to be a better messenger for my thoughts, right? So as a coach, it's easy for me. I've done this so long, and I know I read my players' eyes just like I do as a dad. After some period of time, they're sick of listening. Good for them. I shouldn't be talking. Basketball is supposed to be played. So I try to give so much information in as few words as possible. And I need to do the same thing as a writer. It isn't so easy to do as a writer. So that blueprint that Henry's given me, I try to follow it as much as I can. And as he knows, my muse is his mom. Because if she enjoys what I'm writing, then I'm successful. Because any coach would like anything I write. They're easy. They're the Michael Jordan in this equation. They just give them X's and O's and they'll eat it like it's soup. But I have to get Henry's mom to like what I'm trying to portray. And so she's always in my head that way.
She's like Michael Jordan in some ways, you know.
But that's the blueprint. As a coach, all the time I'm thinking, I got to give them, I have to inspire them. How do I inspire them? I can't just be rah-rah. I have to give them the blueprint for how they'll be successful in whatever that endeavor is, whether it's a skill or it's winning a game. And once they have the blueprint, then it's much easier to start tracking to where they're successful, which is why everyone wash hands, everyone wear a mask, don't leave the house if you're sick. Even without tests, we would be so much better off. It'd be great to have tests too, but we don't have that. And we're just not getting that message at all.
I'm going to weirdly make a plug for Monday's show out of what you just said, David. And Jarod, when you were earlier, you were talking about the ruling class, and David was talking about washing hands and leadership. Our Monday guest is a good dream guest for me. Dwayne Kennedy is an amazing comedian who I only learned about a week ago. It came up in the car when my son and I were in the car, and Spotify somehow nominated this comedy for us. And my brain like flipped out. I'm like, oh, this is my guy. I was like, my dream would be to get to talk to this guy. And a few emails later, lo and behold, he's coming on the show Monday. He's a brilliant, brilliant man, but he says, look, I'm going to mangle this joke, but look it up. It's on Spotify and other places. He's like, oh, this Trump thing, like, it's not political anymore. It doesn't matter. Like, it's just Trump versus the earth. He's like this man, he removed the ban on asbestos. He's like, who's for asbestos? Like, fuck breathing.
That's so true.
But he is like, the key joke, and we'll play the clip on Monday, is like what exactly? It's something about like it's hard out there for a young black psychopath. Like anyway, he's a very, very funny man, and he's gonna touch his brain. I think is on a lot of these places that we're visiting today. I also shout out to we were talking about my mom in the actual chat right now. Very proud of this. My actual mother-in-law, Kimberly Goodwin. I can. Yeah, she's got a lot of Michael Jordan in her too.
Okay, now I have to have two muses.
I know.
Hard enough with one. I'm a simple man. Henry, Devin's got a great question that you can answer better than me. And then I want to talk about the C.J. McCollum article. I think there's a lot of gold in that.
Yes.
So why don't you answer Devin? Devin's easy. It doesn't take me long. But.
Devin's question is, how long does it take to write the articles that we send out? He says on a daily basis, which is very generous. In fact, it's really more like 2 or 3 times a week. The one we sent out yesterday was like as quick as it ever gets, a few hours. Much more typical is it takes 700,000 hours. The one, I know that the one, I don't know how long did you spend on the one we're about to publish today? How long did you spend on that, David?
So I started looking, I'm publishing, Jarod and Devin, I'm publishing kind of like the best in class because the season I think is over. So when I made that decision a couple of days ago, like, we're not playing games this year. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I can look at some awards. So I started looking up on Tuesday. And by yesterday afternoon, I had completed it. And that's normally the case for me. I'm not writing it's hard, Jarod, to write when Henry's the other guy writing. Because my stuff is just so much more simple.
You don't have to kiss my ass, David. It's okay.
No, it's just the truth. You're writing. I mean, you're writing. I enjoy reading the stuff that people write when they write like me because I'm.
And you have the advantage of understanding basketball, so that's a big plus.
Right. Yeah. But it takes a couple of days, and if I'm when I was at ESPN, I'm doing deep analysis or a troop in the last season. Yeah, I'll start Monday looking stuff up. Over the weekend, I'm thinking of what to write about. And they edit a lot and it helps a lot. But Henry's taught me the value of really researching stuff, finding other people's thoughts on it. Normally as an analyst, you're not doing that. This pandemic is helping me because I have no games to write about, right? So I'm forced to kind of dig deeper into doing stuff like that and not just write what I'm seeing and looking up, but go see what other people are writing about and saying, but Henry's process is longer.
And we edit the hell out of it. So like Devin's asking if we edit our own stories. The answer is no. So we've used the normal process now, and it's evolved, is my wife, Jessica, is an incredible editor. So she'll take the first draft of either one of ours and change a lot and say, what are you doing? Like, are you drunk? Which is, she does a nice one. And then Judy is a lawyer, and Judy will read very carefully, and she catches a lot of stuff, and we try not to get sued. That's important. And then goes back, then we'll both, whatever. By the time you do the story, I bet we've put. Suddenly we're seeing Randy's blank screen.
Randy
I don't know. Anyway, I bet that we've put 40, 50 hours in as a group. By the time we publish a story. That sound fair to you?
Yeah.
Something like that?
I agree.
And I'll say this, Devin, once you write a story, I know when I do it, before I submit it to an editor, like my girlfriend usually is a writer, like I'll have her look at it just because you're so close to the story that you miss things. I've been writing about this for days or like whatever it is. And it's like, what your brain is so caught up into it. Plus we didn't even mention all of the research and background, who we're talking to, and to see if there even is a story, right? So there's a lot of steps to put out, something that's like really exhaustive and deep. A 1,200 word, whatever, that may be a little bit easier, but something longer, we really it's a lot of time.
Well, and we're a weirdo. Everyone's a weirdo, right? Like if we're being honest, deep down, with doing the thing that you love, and you should be writing about stuff you love. By the time so now that you're kind of like, let's say a child with a bunch of Legos in the basement, right? And you like you make this big thing that you're sure is awesome. The fact is like, most people won't think it's awesome, right? Like most people will think, oh, I love this part, but over here I'm confused. Like, what is this, right? And this is why you need another person to be like, whoa, I'm the king of this. I'll go 1,000 words in the wrong direction in the middle of a story. And once Jessica and Judy and David have read it, then they're like, I'm a little, what's going on here? Like, and it's like, okay, I got that's a little flight of fancy of mine. Apologize. And maybe there's something in there that we need to keep, but you gotta like iterate, and that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I like that iterate word. All right, so the CJ thing.
Yeah.
I know Henry loves the Blazers.
We already had some Blazer love today. It's a great day for me.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. So he's got this. I guess Yahoo interviewed him, and he's worried. He's worried about coming back. And the thing that I took from it, and we can talk more about Henry, whatever you want to do with it, but I like where he mentioned his personal chef died.
Yeah.
Wow.
He didn't list how. Him and Damien's.
And he was Damien's cousin.
Oh,
God. That's right.
Yeah.
He says not yet known. That only means they're not willing to publish it. It also means it's not yet known.
Might mean he didn't get tested.
Right. I respect. Yeah. All I know. My point is this: a lot of people are protesting now. My argument is most of the people protesting don't know anyone that died. Right? Because it hasn't hit their area yet quite the same. And most of them are white, middle class, whatever. It's coming. But all these players in the NBA, just like Brandon, they know someone who died because very few of them were raised wealthy. Doesn't matter what they are now. And I've said this before, and Henry knows, I'm so proud of, I've coached a lot of good players that have made a lot of money. None of them are above staying at a Radisson hotel. None of them are above staying at a Fairfield Inn for $60 a night if they're there for one night. Like they know where they're from, right? They know they're not going to crumple in the tissue paper in a Radisson. Okay, 4 seasons are great, but they're happy to stay and save the money. But their families still live that life, and that's why when CJ is concerned, he knows how permanent death is. He knows right now. Forget about his past. Right now. And I'm glad that he's giving voice to that because there's other players who feel it and don't have CJ's platform yet to say it.
I'm going to read you a little bit of this. I'm worried like the rest of the world. This is CJ, but I like that it is optional and I'm pleased with the caution, structure, and measures the Blazers organization have put in place to ensure the safest environment possible for all parties involved. I get the measures the league is taking, but you have to think at some point when there are drastic measures that need to be taken, is it really worth it? It's either safe or it's not. And let's just be honest, man. It's not like I'll be the first time players got gym access outside the team's facilities. Some people have been working out, if we're being honest. And then I think did you mention his aunt died too?
Yeah. His great aunt died a few weeks ago.
Right. So
she was supposed to have a heart procedure. They don't know if she was COVID or not.
To this point, it's either safe or it's not is, to me, exactly in line with Jane McManus's tweet that we talked about yesterday, where basically like sports are the result of a functioning society, not like the precursor of it. Okay, let's say we want to answer CJ's question. CJ is asking, is it safe? Like, we have to give him a no today, right?
Definitely not safe. Not even close to being remotely safe.
Yeah.
Right.
My kids quote this. I don't even know what it's from, but there's a jokey line in our house, which is like, "That's a no for me, coach." Does anyone know what that's from? Like, it's great. It works all the time. But like, CJ, do you want to go to the gym today? Like, that's a no for me, coach.
I have video. I just saw on Instagram. One of my players in Spain was doing a workout. He's in this beautiful arena and he's all by himself. And I haven't talked to him, and I just texted him. I don't know if he just used one of my workouts, if a coach was behind the scenes and you don't see it. That's pretty safe. He's by himself. He's in a gym, but that's not how you get ready for an NBA season. Like, that's just step one. In fact, and he was not going fast because I know he's been running underground because in Spain you've been locked down. Like, you can't even go outside of the beach. He lives on the beach. And he sent me a picture the other day of him on the beach. Not him, just the beach, so I know he's there. So clearly they've eased those restrictions. I'm sure he's doing some kind of Game of Thrones workout on the sand. But it's not the same. As I texted him today, like, you got to ease your way into racing again. And that's just by himself. What happens, I mean, they're going to do 3-man weaves. Like, they're going to do the most basic stuff because they've not been doing this for months now. Yeah. And I don't see how all that goes into being safe when our death tolls are going to go up. We're already seeing it. And my wife just told me today, in Florida, we're starting to see more positive cases. And we only opened the state on Monday. And I said to her, and she knows this, that's not because of the ease of restrictions. Right. That's because of complacency. Knowing that restriction easement was coming. So when this starts happening all over the country, I think we're going right back to where we were a month ago.
And here's the reality of it, right? people don't understand how infectious disease works, and they don't care to want to understand how it works. It isn't about, okay, I'm not wearing a mask because things are good. Like, no, dudes, like, you are spreading germs. Like, that is how this thing incubates and continues to spread. And because to your point, Coach, if it flattens, that doesn't mean we're all good. It just means we're not seeing a spike. But that doesn't mean that things are all good, because you start thinking, like, okay, no increase in new cases. Everybody go back to doing their normal stuff, which, by the way, if you walk outside, I mean, you can't, but like outside New York City here, it's like you couldn't even tell that there's a pandemic going on. I'm like, if I didn't see masks, and let me tell you, a bunch of people aren't wearing them, it's like, wow, what are you guys doing? Like, what is happening? And everything tied into the flu. Listen, this is going to run through the summer, late into the fall. The normal flu season is going to come up in December. Like, this is just going to continue on. And I just don't know how people those protesters, they just don't care. Like, it's just ultimately like, it's America. I do what I want. I don't care. And it's sad. It's really sad.
Didn't you start your article, Henry, with what, I don't remember where you put it. What if someone dies?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's
a whole. The NBA is very sensitive to how they appear right now. Right? They did not like, Adam Silver's NBA did not like being accused of jumping a line for tests, right? So every memo to teams now has like, you don't test anybody, right? And to the point where I've had some people now saying like, cool it, like we can get some tests. We feel like we should do this, right? And it was a little different back when the only tests were the state of Oklahoma's, and they only had a precious few. Anyway, so this league, like if we rush it back open or they rush it back open and somebody dies, this is a real honest question from a real current NBA front office person. Is it ever going to open again? You know what I mean? Like, it's dire, right? That would be a dire, just in callous method of PR, right? But if the NBA opens the league, if they lead, if they're first, and somebody dies, then it's going to be late night talk show hosts talking about it. It's going to be maybe even, I could picture congressional hearings, right? I could picture like people really getting in trouble for this, right? So
look, you know what's brilliant here? The NBA, as I said before, being first to be back, no one should, I don't know who wants to be first. No, be last. Let the NFL do it. Because you know why? It doesn't matter, right? Because of who they are and their Trump connections and all that stuff. Right. Let the NFL do, because odds are, if a player does have COVID, they're going to lie in the injury report anyway and say it's a hamstring or some other thing, and how they normally do, right? Because that's the NFL's bag. Do that. Let that league go out and do all the things. Don't, as the NBA, because you have so many other optical things that you can't afford to do, right? Again, the NBA is the black league. Yes, all sports, no, the NBA is the black league. Like, they can't. So, and I think Adam's smart enough to know, yes, I know there's money being lost, but listen, you guys are all billionaires. I know Tillman Fertitta, you're probably siphoning money because, you got some problems, but the rest of you, you're fine. Like, we can figure out a way to do this to like not rush back and cause these long-term, if somebody dies, that is catastrophic.
And frankly, it kind of already happening, right? Like, these deaths are right in and around the NBA, right? Like, it's, it would be very strange if this group of whatever it is, 3,000-ish people that are to the NBA, right? If none of them died, right? The numbers that'd be unusual. So having it traceable to work would be woo. Normal's not, like, returning to normal won't make normal, right? Just like that flight thing. Actually, McKay Coppins in that story has this amazing line. He's like, flying when it's normal comes from when we all trust being near each other again, right? That's why the cops are coming to the food court, is because I don't trust you, right? I mean, as long as we have that problem, we're not gonna have anything like normal, whatever.
That's the thing. Like, I don't even know. Like, when will you guys feel comfortable going out to a restaurant and sitting, how restaurants are, that close to people again?
We talked about it. My wife and I talked the other day about sitting, because we can do this in Florida now, and the weather actually is cooperating. It's cool, maybe for another day or two. Not cool, but not terribly hot and humid. Sitting outside, and then it was all fantasy. Because once I really started thinking about it, I realized, what am I doing? Like, I have a beautiful backyard. I have a nice pool area. Like, no, I'm lucky as hell that I have this. Why would I risk it? There's no benefit for me. We can have friends over and sit 6 feet apart and control our environment. We're not going anywhere. We just, what you said, Jarod, is what I said the other day. We're gonna be the last ones back out. We're going to be the last people back. All my friends will be the last ones to go meet you somewhere. I don't know when that's going to be. It's not going to be this weekend, I can tell you that.
Is this a good time with like no time left on the clock for really sordid conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes. Let's hear it.
All right. So I did a ton of research on Prokhorov and how things work around Putin, and I've written about some of that, and kind of have a sense of like propaganda and how like one intelligence service would manipulate another country, and there's a lot that's fascinating stuff there. And actually, I might write about some of that coming up. But one of the little things that's been interesting to me is like white supremacy has had a little bit of a day in the sun here in the Trump administration, and which was a theme of how the Kremlin operated things in Russia, right? They basically wanted to factionalize politics. They didn't need this group or that group to be strong or weak. They just needed everyone to not have a majority, right? They couldn't have a meaningful opposition to Putin if there were 15 opponents who all were organized against each other, right? They just need a big battle. So there's real research that they kind of peeked into what was happening in US politics, and they, in the election, funded like, Black Lives Matter type groups and white supremacy groups just to factionalize us, just to divide us, right? Very effective. That's been working. So now a lot of those same groups with some of the same funding are showing up on the steps of our capitals with big guns. And I'm like, ooh, this feels Russian, which is of course an outlandish thing to say. But then I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's a known white supremacist leader who was just discovered yesterday by some Intrepid reporting. He's like operating and what he's doing from Russia, like literally from Russia. And I don't think like this is not some Russian scheme. I'm not alleging there's some Russian plan to like have whites take over America. I think there's a Russian scheme to have us disbelieve anyone who might be powerful and threatening to Russia, right? So in this case, it's probably Joe Biden, right? In the Russia's case, it's Alexei Navalny was the guy who could conceivably run against Putin. And they're just like, oh, we got to have dirt on everybody, just dirt on everybody, right? And so anyway, when I saw that guy's much, I was like, oh my God, like the people on the doorstep of the Capitol with the guns, like conceivably actually have a direct connection.
I mean, it's crazy. Look at it. Coronavirus has become political. It's left and right. Like, what even is that? We're talking about lives and people dying. That's not, I'm left and I'm right. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
But,
it is. It's crazy. It's hard to follow up that amazing thing.
I know. It's not a basketball show anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it back though. So this is just a quick request for anyone hearing this, including those of you that are watching. There's been no games next week, and I normally like to write about games, and unless something really amazing happens on the Last Dance, I'm open to any idea regarding a basketball-related thing you'd love to get diagnosed. I feel like I could probably solve a good number of your questions, and I'm happy to do it in one piece. So we might even tweet this out. I'll talk to Judy about maybe doing a tweet question. If you have any thoughts, email us, please. I'd love Coach Thorpe to dive into this or that, whatever. I'm happy for it not to be about The Last Dance. Let me make that perfectly clear. It had no connection at all to that documentary is fine with me. The question I skipped that I gave Jarod my time to today is Giannis going to stay in Milwaukee? He could be out next year. And I don't think he's going to stay in Milwaukee. I have no reporting. I just looked at that roster and what's coming up, and I know how competitive he is. Jordan wouldn't have stayed in Chicago. And Giannis is a really, really competitive dude and doesn't have the pull that LeBron does, at least now. So I could talk about that, but it's just all speculative. I'm happy to talk about whatever. So if you have any thoughts, throw them out there, and and maybe I'll pick one or two or three or whatever and write about it for next week.
That's an awesome idea.
Love it.
I also am interested in ideas for next week. Also, if you want to write the story for next week, that's fine too.
Yes, I agree.
All right,
Jarod, a good one. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good
Yes,
one. Anything else you'd like to add, sir, in closing?
No, just as always, thanks for having me, guys. We really appreciate you, tuning in to bring it in. Keep it up. Everyone have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you, David. Have a great weekend. See you guys next week. Monday, big show.